Shaun, welcome to the grid.
Welcome, friends, patriots, family, to season 4 of The Grid, episode 3.
I threw it out there just to see if you would pick up the baton and run with it. Great job. So our topic today is a little different. We've got a lot to cover, but we're focusing on the Republican National Convention in Milwaukee that just ended. Shaun, did you watch any of the convention?
I'd say I watched most of it. I missed a good chunk of the first night. I saw a little bit more on Tuesday and then most of Wednesday and Thursday.
So I would say I was probably in the same boat. I watched a little bit every day, but because I didn't have it on cable, we just watched, I would say, maybe more of the main speakers, a little bit on my phone because we were out a bit as well. And also got to see NBC's coverage of it, which is a whole nother story. Might even touch on that today if we have a chance. It's pretty interesting, especially MSNBC, how they portrayed versus what reality actually happened. I don't know if you read any commentary on that, but it's pretty funny. So Shauna, as we talk about, there's a ton to dialogue regarding the Republican National Convention, what it was not. But I thought just because of maybe some of the things we were talking about for show prep, let's talk about let's just get it out of the way. What was one negative thing that you went, yeah, that's not the right place for this. This is not sending a good message, particularly opening night as they closed. What was it that you were sharing with me earlier?
Well, see, I missed that part. So if you had asked that question, I didn't see that. I saw that part in a podcast that somebody else, they specifically addressed the closing prayer. So if I hadn't seen that clip, I would have answered your question. Nothing. Everything was great. But I saw the clip and we have freedom of religion in the United States. And that is key because it helps us deal with other nations in the world. But to cut my answer a bit shorter, instead of going to Paris and back, they invited somebody who is Sikh to close in prayer, and they did so to their God, whom they refer to as the one true God. My eyes didn't pop completely out of my head when I saw this, but it was like, oh my gosh. And it's like, nothing against her, and we shouldn't be pigpiling on her. Very beautiful lady with a beautiful seafoam looking scarf, very beautiful voice. And I would consider her the innocent in this. She was invited to do what others had done. But whoever booked her does need to understand what idolatry is.
So I didn't see this either. And when you told me about it a few minutes ago, I was on one hand surprised, but not shocked. And I'm going to tell you why I was not shocked, which really is some of the bulk of the conversation I thought about having today. The Republican Party at this convention, the Republican Party in current state, supposedly the umbrella of conservatism, is not the conservative party of the past. Would you agree with that?
Agreed, and even more so now.
Yeah, after seeing this week, it's not. And when I say that, I'm really talking about maybe the staunch champions of really the conservative cause. People that I even people who are not necessarily in politics, but Mark Levine and Bill Bennett and some of these folks who have really championed conservative causes fiscally, socially, from a foreign policy perspective. Very, very conservative, but which, by the way, I completely align with those values, lock, stock, and barrel.
Love Mark Levin.
The great one, as they call him. And so this is not the same party. And from one perspective, that's not great because we want to see those values espoused front and center. But on the other hand, and I think there's something very positive about this, Shaun. And to really understand that, I think we actually have to go to the Democrat Party and say, what is it that they've done well over the last I'm going to say 30 years. You and I talked about this. What is the one thing that they do really, really, really well?
Agree when it comes to voting.
Exactly. Now, I threw that out there. I wasn't sure if you were going to say destroy America. They're very good at
Well,
that
they
too.
can do that too, but they're doing
Yes.
that as kind of like, oh, what do you call it? A side effect.
Yes, that's not the cause, that's the result. Um, yeah, they're unified in voting. And quite frankly, when you say voting, that means voting at the ballot box. It means voting in Congress. It means pretty much anything that involves voting. They put their differences aside because they are 100% wholly unified to oppose Christianity, conservative values, conservative principles, Republican Party. And it doesn't matter in their coalition, in the Democratic coalition, the cartels coalition, doesn't matter if you're LGBTQ or African American or Hispanic or transgender or a progressive liberal ideologue, it doesn't matter. That entire coalition has many things, social and political, that they don't agree on, except for they will unite to vote against anything that has to do with conservative Judeo-Christian values. And Shaun, in some ways, I've been envious of that. I've been envious of their ability to overcome their differences to vote in a way, even though their votes are wrong. Is that how you see it?
Yeah, pretty much, because it seems like as long as they agree that it advances their cause an inch, yes, they will vote on it. They will vote together, lock, stock, and barrel.
And so when you think about that, what is it that the Republicans have done really, really well over the last 34 years? I would say it's been very clear on our principles, very clear on our values. But what's the one thing that we've done horribly on? Consistently, we've not done very well on this. And what's that?
Voting together. We have
Voting
a
together.
group and that we probably, the two of us, pretty much align with, and I can't remember the terminology, but they're like the staunch conservatives.
The Freedom Caucus.
Thank you, the Freedom Caucus. I love the Freedom Caucus, and for the most part, you and I, what they're standing for, we stand for too. But they will not budge when the advantage, even though it's small, is being advanced.
Especially in light of Shaun, the way our founding fathers built our political system, they built it to require compromise, to require debate, to require working together to get things done. And the group in the Freedom Caucus, now a lot of them I'm totally fine with. You and I have talked about this. I'll continue to say this. Matt Gaetz is a jerk. He's a total chump, and unfortunately, he's kind of led that group. At least, if not the de facto leader, certainly has done so more on TV and camera. And that group, led by him, has said it's all or nothing. We'll take it all or we'll take nothing. And we will ride the ship down to the bottom of the sea to get what we want. And on one hand, you kind of go, okay, well, I mean, I understand that you're being principled, but you certainly are not being wise at all. And it's really caused divisions in the Republican Party. Well, I shouldn't say that. Let me backtrack. I think that's an outward manifestation of what has existed for 3 or 4 decades in the Republican Party. It's the inability to put some of those nuanced differences aside to unite together for the overall cause. And because of that, we have suffered at the ballot box. We have suffered in elections, particularly presidential elections, because these groups cannot unite. You can look at Mitt Romney and the Freedom Caucus group and Trump, and none of them can come together. I probably spent more time on that than I needed to, but why do I bring that up? Did you see that division manifested at the RNC this week in Milwaukee?
No,
What did you see?
absolutely not. I saw people like Tucker Carlson who came in making remarks just like this, like, man, this is the best party I've ever been to. And even though I didn't hear the other networks, but there were various people that when they were interviewed that said that even the other networks were noticing that there is such a different atmosphere to this than all of the other conventions, both sides of the aisle that they'd ever been to.
I heard the same thing. I heard even the liberal network saying they could feel the energy. Now, except for MSNBC, I know they couldn't really feel the energy because they weren't actually there. They just had the convention on the back, in the back behind them, up on an LED screen, and they set up their tables as if they were there covering the event live, and they were not. I just had to put that plug in for just how deceptive that is. But yeah, you could
Yeah.
feel the energy. I could feel the energy through the TV. And so I'm listening to the speakers, and there's no way that I can name all of them, Shaun, but there was a Jewish individual that spoke, Amber Rose. I'm not sure if that's her name, an influencer. I never even heard of her. I mean, that's really not my circle that I travel in as influencers. But
And her speech, oh my gosh,
it was
I'd
it
heard the
was
name a couple of times,
it was
but her
good.
speech, oh my gosh.
Yeah, because I mean, so for those of you who may know Amber Rose or may not, she basically just said, I grew up in a family and I learned to hate Republicans and hate Trump. And my father told me I'm voting for Trump, and I freaked out. And he said, you need to not research him from your media outlets. You need to do your own homework. And when she did, she came to the conclusion he's not this racist, evil person that people think he is. He's not what he is portrayed to be. And so as she gave her speech, she just talked about that, really that conversion. And so that was particular. And the other thing I think that really highlighted hers for me, it was not so much what she said, it's what others said. Now, many of you may know Van Jones, who is an ultra liberal ideologue, who is a huge supporter of Obama. He was a czar in Obama's cabinet, kind of the unofficial, or definitely not an official elected position. He came out and said that he thinks Amber Rose's presence and speech was likely the most damaging thing to the Democratic Party that the Republicans did, because she has a huge following, over 1 million people. When you have a progressive liberal stand up and say that, it catches my attention. So Amber
Wow.
Rose was there, and then of course Tucker Carlson, and then you got to love UFC's Dana White, and then Hulk Hogan, and there was some funny characters, some funny characters. And I will tell you, I did not hear a principled conservative message at the Republican National Convention. What I heard was more of a populist message. Shaun, would you agree? I mean, is that kind of what you heard?
Yeah, I would agree because there were things that were doubled down on, but those things were items where the country has been crumbling for the past 4 years. In areas that weren't crumbling, my favorite line was,
President Trump handed Biden a booming economy and a strong nation. All Joe had to do was leave it alone and take a nap.
I didn't see that. That is great.
leave it alone and go take a nap.
Nope, he had to break it. I, I
Oh,
think I think and of course, as you think about all these people that spoke, they all had different points of view. JD Vance was very good. I don't agree with his foreign policy, but I think there's aspects of him that are very principled conservatively, probably more socially. His fiscal policy is a little different. I disagree. So I think that's the point, though. I didn't agree with everyone, but we were united in this fact that the left, the far left, is destroying this country at an unprecedented rate. And all of these folks were uniting around to do something about it. Shaun, I forget the guy's last name, but his name was Shaun, the head of the Teamsters Union, to come to a Republican National Convention and give an impassioned speech about how Trump's willing to have a dialogue and how JD Vance is a big supporter. You cannot overstate the importance of that man's presence and his conversation when the unions typically don't even look at who's on the ballot. They are just going to endorse whoever the Democratic candidate is because they hate the Republicans.
exactly. And what is crucial is that Trump wants to bring manufacturing back to the United States. We have got to get it back. And the only way that we're going to effectively get the bulk of our manufacturing back is that we must work with the unions. We must. And the thing, I like JD Vance, but I think the one thing that the opposition refuses to look at is the fact that Trump actually likes to listen to people who disagree with him, because most of the time there is a reason, besides they just hate Trump, that they disagree with him. So why do you disagree, and how can we address that issue?
And it's interesting, just speaking of JD Vance as his VP pick, JD Vance is well known. In 2016, he just basically said Trump's an arrogant a-hole and I don't like him. And Vance has come out and said, I didn't know him. I bought into the narrative. Once I learned more about him and I watched him govern, my tune changed. Well, somebody at the convention said that the only thing that Trump's likes better than someone who is loyal, it's that someone who didn't like him and is a convert. And JD Vance certainly fits that category. Yeah, it was. I think the things that again that we really have to focus on that felt so different to me, Shaun, is that there was unity. I haven't seen a Republican Party. I haven't seen a convention. I haven't seen this kind of unity come together. And I think that's the only way we win this anyway. You can't have a fragmented coalition that's infighting and expect to overcome, I'm going to call it, the enemy. And for years, that's been the exact case. This year, the roles have been reversed because you're seeing the Democrats going haywire over, is Biden the candidate? Is Biden not the candidate? Should we kick him out? Should we pressure him? What can we do? I mean, they are in a full-scale panic.
Which is a terrific segue to say that you are watching The Grid, the intersection of faith, politics, and commerce. And that brings up faith. And I think that if you look at this week and everything that was said and done, this is a group and this is a movement who saw the leader that they are looking to put back in the White House escape death. And they've seen the trajectory of that bullet and those bullets that whizzed past his head. And they know that God intervened, or that man's head would have been blown off, or at least irreparably damaged, and he'd have died.
If any of you actually watched the convention, you'll know that Reverend Franklin Graham referenced that. I really enjoyed listening to his conversation. It wasn't real long. As a side note, when he got up there, I went, Billy Graham is back from the dead. He's just changed. He looks so much like Billy Graham. I could not believe it. But he got up and just spoke about really this divine intervention. And I think what we saw, I think really Tucker Carlson, believe it or not, I'm not a huge Tucker Carlson fan. I don't always agree with him, and sometimes he's a little bit sarcastic, but he said something that really resonated with me. He said, this convention has had a profound impact. The failed assassination attempt has had a profound impact on Trump. And that's this. Before all of this, Trump was he was the presidential political candidate of the Republican Party. He just became the leader of the country. And Tucker talked about how you don't have to be in a leadership position yet to be a leader. And many people who are in the leadership position are not leaders. And he just, yeah, actually we have a case in point right now we're seeing. I think he's right. What we saw at the Republican National Convention, I've had the sense that we're actually seeing more broadly than even that the country is rallying around the president, Donald J. Trump. Mm-hmm. And that's just interesting to see. So anyway, overall, the convention was like nothing I've seen. The unity is something that I haven't experienced before. And it's pretty exciting to see how maybe we can put some of our differences aside and move forward to rescue this country. And I think God is in this process. He clearly saved Trump's life. So there has to be a purpose in that. Shaun, I want to shift gears for a second, because right after, I thought this was really interesting. Right after the convention, the calls for Biden to resign, they just exploded. I expected the opposite, but they just exploded. Now, I guess dovetailing with that, he did come down with COVID. Biden came down with COVID. But the calls for him to resign have just exploded. Shaun, what do you think is the precipice for that?
I'm not really sure how to answer that question, because I've got a bunch of, there are a bunch of answers from different directions. They're all in my head. The primary one is a spiritual answer, and that is that the hand of God has been on Donald Trump since the beginning. And scripture tells us that Nebuchadnezzar, who was a wicked king, wicked pagan king, but scripture says that the Lord called him his servant. The Lord can use anybody as a servant, even if they are not cognizantly aware that they're a servant of God, because they're like a tool. And the evidence that the hand of God is on Donald Trump is every attack that has been launched against him. He more than survives, he thrives. Now, anybody that looks at him and listens to him would know, without him saying so, because he hasn't actually said this, they would know he would much rather not deal with all of the attacks. But every time he's attacked, his approval goes up. That is not normal.
No, it's not normal, and it's not. But the whole convention is not normal. He has been able to bring people under the tent of the Republican Party that we've not done in the past, because we've been so staunch that you either agree with us 100% or get out. And what has that resulted in? That's resulted in us patting each other on the back for feeling very, very principled and resolute in our loss.
Now, the flip side to my answer, the Democrat side of it, is the Democrats have sought to legalize one sin after another. Now, spiritually and scripturally speaking, you cannot embrace sin and last a long time. At some point, your base is going to crumble. Whatever you have built on is going to fall apart. And that's what we're seeing. It's falling apart. And as I mentioned in the podcast last week and the week before, I do firmly believe that the Lord has hardened Biden's heart. And a sign of a hardened heart is that when they are called on or called out for doing something wrong, instead of backing up and going, "Oh, I'm sorry," they double down.
In his case, triple, quadruple, double down. So I want to talk about that for a minute. I have a theory, and we're going to leave an opportunity on this podcast to addend it this weekend, if in fact something changes. But I think Shaun and I both feel pretty confident that in the next couple of days, Biden's going to drop out of the race, despite the double, triple, quadruple, double down. Well, that's a mouthful to say. Insiders are saying that COVID has caused him to reevaluate. Whatever. I'm not sure anything's caused him to reevaluate. I tend to believe that there's a group of cabal behind the scenes that are offering his family a big nest egg so that Hunter Biden doesn't have to gallop around the world trying to peddle his influence. In fact, I've believed for a while one of the reasons he doesn't want to get out is because that cash flow stream likely is still operating even as we speak, and that we need that. Or excuse me, they need that. We need him to
And don't be surprised if Hunter disappears.
Yeah, interesting. So here's what I think is going to happen. There's one thing I think that's going to happen. This is not, I haven't prayed over this. It's just kind of what I'm thinking, as well as what I fear. So what I think is going to happen is I think Biden's going to drop out of the race, and I think Kamala is going to be elevated as the candidate. And I think the Democrats actually want that. That's what I think, because they know they can't win with Biden. I think after the RNC, they know they can't win, period. So I think they want to elevate Kamala so that she will be defeated and end her political career in this election cycle, because she's horrible. And I don't think they want to have to deal with her again. That's what I think.
Plot twist. So I think that's a very viable course, but I think too that she will have a taste of what it is to be president when he steps out of office and she becomes the 47th president. But then she turns, because only Kamala can inherit that war chest. No one else can legally inherit that war chest. So he steps down for health reasons. He steps out of the Oval Office. She becomes the first woman president. God help us, Jesus. And then she turns the election over to somebody else, soberly recognizing that she doesn't have a snowball's chance in a barbecue pit. And then she turns that money over to them. They're not going to win, but I believe that's what taking what you just said, going forward, I think that's what's going to happen.
That's certainly a theory as well. The one I fear the most is that Michelle Obama becomes the candidate. Now, I fear that from an earthly perspective, not in the spiritual realms, because God's will is going to be done. As a candidate, Michelle Obama would present a significant challenge, not because of her, but because of Barack himself. So let's hope we don't go there. Anything short of that, I think the pathway's already been made clear. I think Trump's our next elected president.
Yeah. Well, yeah, the next few months from now until November, you could probably write a television series about, and literally every week there's a new subject.
Oh, in fact, didn't we say last week, get your popcorn ready?
We did. And then we had to scrap that episode because the drama just increased. It overwhelmed our popcorn.
Yeah, I think the drama around this, don't think for a minute, if what we've said comes true, Biden drops out, Kamala becomes the candidate or the president, whatever, and Trump's elected, don't think for a minute that the opposition is going to stop to try to destroy the legitimacy of his presidency. We're going to keep talking about this, folks, because there's also another piece we haven't even talked about yet of how important it is. It's taking the House and the Senate. We need the trifecta in order to dismantle this cartel.
And I was very much hoping that Trump would actually address the down ballot stuff while he was talking yesterday. He didn't, but
No, he's actually, unlike 2016 or 2020, Trump has run a more disciplined campaign this cycle, particularly the discipline of his mouth.
Mm-hmm.
He has let silence in some cases, when somebody's hanging themselves, far be it from you to try to take the rope from them. Let them continue to dig their own hole. And he's done that by and large pretty well. So I have noticed he's stayed away from certain things to, I think, just let the bad guys kind of destroy themselves.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. I think we talked about that, or I mentioned that in a podcast that we did, the Substitute podcast for last week, our special edition. There's an old phrase by some wicked guy that says something about don't interfere with your opponent when he's in the process of making a mistake. And it's like, that is actually wisdom. It's a good strategy. And I think that's what he did up until the attempted assassination. He really laid low and just let them fall apart.
He really has. I mean, the Republican Party has mastered over the years the ability to snatch defeat from the jaws of victory.
Right. And we've got to stop that. That's just not a good skill.
So, more to come. We've got a lot of conversation between now and November as we talk about the down ballot stuff. I'm not trying to be, let's say I'm not being overly optimistic. I'm just calling it like we see it. Right now, what I see is a win on unprecedented levels. That's what the polls are showing right now. If that changes, we'll talk about that too. But right now, that's what I'm seeing. I'm seeing up and down the ballot wins. I'm seeing an expansion of our majority in the House. I see us taking the Senate, and I think we're going to win the presidency in a landslide.
The good news is that the wickedness and the more of the wickedness and corruption of the Democrat cartel is being exposed to the folks who vote Democrat. More and more are seeing, oh my gosh.
Because those who are moderate and in the middle are becoming Trumpified. I mean, they just are.
Yeah.
We interrupt the end of this podcast for breaking news, as promised, regarding the Biden-Harris campaign.
Well, Shaun, you called it. I called it. Here we are doing a quick update to the podcast. Breaking news that is reverberating across the entire political landscape of our country. What did we just learn?
Joe Biden is stepping down from the campaign. And
he has endorsed Kamala Harris. Now, Shaun, you may not know this, but the Clintons have already endorsed Kamala Harris as well. So that was a little surprising given the articles I read over the weekend saying how Hillary Clinton would be a perfect stand-in for Joe Biden in this election. But who knows? As I was teasing with my kids, I thought, well, maybe Hillary's making a play for VP and then she can knock off Kamala with some mysterious illness. And then that's her pathway to the president. We say that in jest, folks. The trail of dead bodies is pretty long behind the Clintons, but I digress.
Can
Shaun,
you imagine her taking orders from Kamala Harris?
I know, no kidding.
Pass the popcorn, please.
Pass the popcorn. Folks, we told you a couple weeks ago to get the popcorn ready. And it's just going to keep coming. This is one heck of a show that we're going to experience between now and November, both good and bad, good, bad, and ugly, I think. So what does that endorsement mean? Shaun, is Kamala now the Democratic nominee for president of the United States?
Well, it seems to me by law, that would be the way the cookie crumbles because the ticket is Biden-Harris. So with him stepping down, she has to legally assume the campaign and the war chest.
So this is what actually happened from what I read. That's actually not the case.
Oh, really?
The endorsement means nothing other than he is sending a signal to his delegates that he would like them to throw their support behind Kamala. She does not become the presumptive nominee. She still has to earn and win the votes of the nominees at the DNC committee. So here, it's kind of interesting. I'm not going to go into too much detail, but as I was reading about this today to truly try to understand what the heck is going on. So in the Democratic Party, they have a very unique system in which you have delegates and superdelegates. Superdelegates automatically have a vote, can do whatever they want, and their people, by their position that they have votes. Those would be governors, people within the campaign. Those would be senators and Congress folks. Those people have automatic votes. Those are called superdelegates. Those are the ones that Hillary pretty much destroyed everybody. She didn't even win the popular vote when she was running in 2016, but she had sewn up all the superdelegates. Well, in this case, this will go back to the DNC unless they change the rules between now and August 19th. It'll go back to the DNC. Someone will nominate her, and then they'll do a what you call a roll call or a vote for the non-superdelegates. If she gets the majority of those votes, then she's the nominee. If she does not, then they go to round 2 of voting, and now all the superdelegates get to vote as well. So it could be a complicated process. I anticipate others throwing their hat in the ring, but we'll have to see. Now, as far as the money, there's some $300 million out there, $284 million, if I remember at my last count, in the Biden Kamala Harris war chest. However, a lot of that is in the super PAC. Apparently around, I think it was 90 or $91 million is actually dedicated exclusively to their campaign. Kamala does get that. Now, what I thought before, she would be the natural choice because she was the only one that could inherit that. And that is true because when they filed with the Federal Election Commission, it was the campaign for Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. So that's how she gets to inherit that. However, from federal election law, if that had not been the case or it was another nominee, the Joe Biden campaign, he could have donated that money back to the Democratic National Party, and then they could have redistributed it amongst various super PACs. So it's not like the money was really going to be lost anyway. That's a little bit different than I originally understood it to be. So, Shaun, there's a lot at play here. Money, nominee, politicking. Um, to me, I think we're just going to have to wait and see. That's my opinion. But there is one particular question that I personally want answered. Do you have any idea what that question is?
Could it have something to do with the cash?
No, it does not have to do with the cash. And actually, this question has been reverberating in my mind. I heard JD Vance ask it, but I'm not sharing that because of that. I've been wanting this for some time. If Joe Biden is unfit to run for president of the United States, why is he fit to govern until the next president is inaugurated?
Exactly. Exactly. You're fit for both or you're unfit for both. You can't have it both ways.
You can't have it both ways. So I have a prediction. Now, I read Biden's letter that said that he is dropping out for the betterment of the country, the betterment of the party, so that he can focus on his presidential duties on the remaining part of his term. I predict that he will not make it to the end of his term, that Kamala Harris will become the president of the United States in the short term, and then she will unleash a fury of pardons. That's my prediction.
I'm going to say that minus the pardons thing, which wouldn't surprise me at all, I agree. I think that she will become 47, which means that Trump will become 48.
Pretty interesting. And, if Biden was going to drop out, I'm pretty happy that Kamala is the candidate. I will tell you that just because I've seen her.
She polls worse than he does.
Yeah. If you listen to her word salads, you would realize that this lady has no business being in the Oval Office. But there's one thing that I lament the most, and that was to see JD Vance actually debate her, vice president to vice president. That would have been double popcorn, quite frankly. Trump will do fine, but he won't intellectually destroy her the same way that JD Vance would have. So I am going to miss that.
No.
There's a lot to unfold here. Keep your popcorn in your lap. Let's get ready. Let's watch. Folks, the chaos of the Democratic Party, we just got to make sure it doesn't become the chaos of our country. And this is serious stuff that we are talking about. Literally, much of our country as we know it is at stake based on these crazy folks that are running in the opposite party. But that being said, Shaun and I thought that maybe we'd end this podcast, we'd end this update with a little bit of humor.
So take it away, Pastor James Ronke.
It's a great pleasure to be here. Great pleasure to see President Donald Trump safe. And if I may, before the benediction, give you this promise. You're going to be so blessed. You're going to be tired of being blessed. I guarantee it. Believe me.
Okay.
Oh my gosh, that was so funny. I literally let it run on my phone like probably a dozen times. It was just so hilarious. And it was so fun to see President Trump just light up because it was very respectful and it was just genuinely funny.
Absolutely. And you know what? As challenging and painful as some of this has been, we need a little humor, I think.
We do.
Folks, thanks for listening to this quick update to our overall podcast. It's been quite the week between the RNC convention that made you feel proud to be an American and Biden dropping out, wondering what the heck is going to happen. Till next time.
Till next time.